Another 0-0 over 270 minutes since the last Cambridge United league goal, and another striker with a hamstring injury. These running orders aren't getting any more positive. Welcome along, everyone. I'm Julian Roberts, and despite the lack of match action, we do have a lot to discuss today, and I've got the best brains in the business to do that with me. Jordan Warland, how are you, mate? I joined you in the main stand yesterday. No, not joined you, but I joined the main stand crew, and I really enjoyed it.
Well, we did see each other. It was lovely to see you there.
We had a pint at half time.
We did, and you sound a little bit downbeat in your intro,
I
Julian.
am a little bit, mate, to be honest.
It's as if the lack of goals is getting you down.
2 weeks in a row doing 2-0-0s.
I'm
Previews and
intrigued.
reviews of both games.
I'm
I'm
intrigued to
only
see how we're
human.
gonna get some content out of this. Yeah, what back-to-back nil-nils, 3 league games without a goal, I believe. Good stuff.
Yeah,
Good stuff to digest.
it is, isn't it, Swindle? How are you?
Yeah, all good, mate. Echoing the general feel, I think it's a bit of all bark and no bite at the moment, and we harp on about platforms to build on so much on this podcast, but we're running a bit short on building on those platforms at the moment. And yeah, a bit of a frustrating watch, but another point gain, and I'm sure we'll dissect that in the coming
We
hour.
need to release the goal train from this platform.
Maybe that's it.
Something like that.
They took this platform's chat a bit too seriously, I think, the club at this point, because there's just absolutely nothing, is there? I mean, yeah, let's start there. Platform to build on or not? Jord, I saw you in the evening after we bumped into each other again.
Outside a pub, which may or may not be a number one ferry path.
Yeah, actually outside our ex-sponsors, King Street Cellar, which you should go down to. But I have to say I wasn't having a pint at the Old Spring, but obviously everyone should be going to the Old Spring for happy hour every Saturday. But Jord, we bumped into each other and we had a very quick chat about the game. And I'm really intrigued by both your thoughts because me and Jord saw it one way, but from a quick chat you'd had, Jord, with Casper and Swindle, I think, after the game, maybe we were all seeing it a bit differently. So why don't we start with you, Jord? What was your take overall on the game and what the point
Yeah,
was like?
I think you and I might be the outsiders here, Julian, because
I think
yeah,
so.
I had a friend who doesn't normally go to Cambridge United who went on Saturday, and they text me in the evening, literally just saying one for the purists today. They also then followed up by saying, I got to see Laurie McFun at halftime though, which was a treat. So a special treat for his very rare Newmarket Road end visit. Yeah, I'm intrigued to hear what Swindle thought, because everyone I spoke to after the game, and then sort of the general vibe that I can see online for the most part, your message board on your X replies and things like that are all pretty downbeat. Whereas I feel like a little bit more positive, because I feel like it was a point earned. And yes, there's lots there on Saturday to be worried about, specifically in that final third going forward. We've already mentioned it. No goals in the last 3 league games. But I thought it was a really difficult afternoon on Saturday in difficult conditions, playing, I think, the best team we've seen at the Abbey so far this season, a very well drilled visiting team. And in response to that, Harris had us very well drilled as well in terms of how to counter that. Playing a team, as you expertly previewed on the Friday pod, that have the best XG in the league. They clearly had a lot about them. Was it Kanu, their winger, was really exciting, really tricky down that left hand side. It's on the one-off on the Saturday, I do think it was a half decent showing in certain areas, in defence, in goal. Midfield did okay. As a standalone situation, I think Saturday is okay, but it kind of then sort of leans into the conversation that we've had on this pod before, especially after the Salford game, about it's not just in isolation, it is now 3 games without the goals and back-to-back nil-nil. So that's where it starts to become a bit worrying. But for Saturday's worth, I do think it was a well-earned point. I think we did very well to weather a difficult storm on the pitch towards the end of the first half. The last sort of 15 minutes or so, we were properly under the cosh. It felt like they had about 20 corners back-to-back, which felt like we dealt with that really well. And then the second half started pretty brightly for Barnet. They had a really good shot, a good save from Eastwood, and you just thought, oh, it's going to be more of the same of what we saw in the second part of the first half, but we turned it around, and I feel like we edged the second half. We can argue the merit of not really testing their goalkeeper, but I think we looked good down the channels. I think we were bright without just having that end product. And yeah, obviously that's a big deal. It's got worse with the injury that you alluded to in your intro there. Um, but there are elements from Saturday that I think are positive, and yeah, I think it was a point earned for me on.
Yeah, yeah. Look, we spoke a lot last week about sort of whether it was whether you can take the result itself in isolation. This is at Salford, or if you need to see it as part of a bigger picture. And frustratingly, it's probably one of those things where you need to do a bit of both. And I think when you're talking about just Saturday's game, I just echo everything that you thought, Jord. Personally, I thought I saw it exactly the same way as you. Where I think the point will age really well. I think they're without going overboard because they're only 12th or whatever, 11th in the league. I do think they'll get better and better, and I think we saw what's the attributes they've got. I think in isolation, I said it on the train on the way to the game when with Tom, we both said it's probably one of those where people it will be hard to accept it as a good point, but it's probably a better point than or it would be a better point than it kind of feels. And I back that because I think doing that and keeping a clean sheet, as much as we kind of laugh about platforms, is just undoubtedly a good thing. But having said all of that, the wider image has to be taken into account here, which is a lot of what today's pod is about. The frustration with a lack of depth up front, the injury you alluded to there, the whole system and approach that Harris takes, which is in full showing in these last few games. And the view I got yesterday actually sort of gave me a fresh perspective on that. But Swindle, what about the other side? Well, maybe you don't, maybe you agree with us, but where do you stand on it?
I do not.
Yeah, tell us I'm wrong.
Yeah, I think Neil Harris made a good point in his post-match interview. I think the positive is the point, but I think the performance itself was quite one-dimensional, and also we invited a lot of pressure on ourselves. I think we absorbed it quite well, but I mean, Eastwood put in a shift and made a couple of saves that, there's been some people targeting Eastwood saying that, actually out of the last six or seven shots on target that he's faced, he's only actually saved one of them. And there's been questions about Eastwood's and his performances. So I think he put in a stellar one, but I think we were weak in the middle of the park again. I think we offered very little kind of threat, and that's becoming a theme. And I think, as you've both alluded to already in this pod, like, this is now bigger than just a game and taking it by game. I think, yeah, the clean sheets are one thing. I think we rode our luck a little bit on Saturday, actually. I think there were a couple of times when Barnett really probably should have scored. I think, as Jordan said, that Kanu looked really dangerous, but I think we made them look better than they necessarily are. That they're in a similar position in the table for us, and I think they're probably beatable like we are on our day. But we've been bragging about this home form and how we can make the Abbey a fortress. And whilst we didn't concede, taking a point from the game, I can understand why people are disappointed. I don't think we want to blow it out of proportion. It's a point gained in a very long season. The league's still very tight, but I feel like there's just a kind of underlying feeling that Cambridge United aren't kind of living anywhere near to their full potential, and they're not quite able to kind of hit that next gear. There's not enough attacking kind of threat. And we don't seem to have much, change of ideas. And I think you've already referenced, Julian, about Neil Harris and how he sets up and the kind of maybe stubbornness in that. And I think that's coming back to bite us a bit. League Two is a different kettle of fish. We're a very changed squad. We're already suffering with injuries, and I think we maybe need to think outside the box and be a little bit braver. I don't think we were brave enough. And I don't think we've been brave enough for a few games in that respect. If we're want to be considered in that playoff picture, which we're very, very much still in, both automatic and, playoffs, I think we need to be a bit braver and make the home games count. We spoke last year about turning 0 points into 1. Well, now we're looking at turning 1 point into 3, and that's what we're going to have to be doing.
I think that's a crucial point. Actually, I think we're probably all agreeing a bit more than it kind of feels. I just think we're approaching it from different perspectives, and it's not that there's a right or wrong answer, because clearly, even from the questions, people are probably more aligned to you, Swindle, that people are just frustrated by it. But I think it's what we're talking about, as you just summed up there, is kind of not the frustration at the point. It's not the same as when we didn't beat Harrogate at home, when that point was a very different type of point to this. It's the trend, and the thing is that Harris is backing himself into a corner in two ways. For me, the first one is, if we're going to be that bad away from home and approach games like Tranmere, which keeps coming up in the way that we did, You have to win home games. You have to like the onus is on you to win a lot of home games in a way that if we'd been slightly better away from home, again, I think this point feels even better than it probably does. And the other one is the style thing, which is the big thing here, I think, which we should probably address now, which is I think people are just suddenly it's dawning on them this realization that this is it, this is Harris, this is what he does. You said at the start there, we invited a lot of pressure on. That's what he wants. He's happy for them to have the ball. They had 11 shots yesterday, four on target, but only one on target in the box. I think he looks at that and goes, "We're restricting them to a lot of efforts on outside the box," and that's how he wants us to defend, right? He wants to play that kind of play the margins in that respect to then be able to break, and it's defense first and attack second, and that's kind of the mantra. Whether that's right or wrong, I'm not saying I agree or disagree with it, but I think that's just we've kind of made our bed with Harris like that a little bit. So the frustration, obviously, is I think for a lot of people to realizing going, oh, hang on, right, this is it. This isn't going to change.
Yeah, and I think that's absolutely valid. And I think like we kind of knew what we were getting when we signed up with Neil Harris. But that only, if we're considering ourselves, potential promotion team, then we need to deliver at the other end, and that's down to all the players on the pitch, but it's also down to Harris and the staff and how they set up and the kind of mentality that they instill. Because I think for all that we managed the defensive side of the games really well, we look at a game like the Harrogate game that you mentioned. The reason why people were so annoyed is because of how much we dominated that game, and Barnet and Harrogate are two different entities, but that we didn't offer anything kind of vaguely in the realms of what we did against for periods of that game against Harrogate. And I think that's where the frustration is coming in, because there's long attritional games with very little incident happening. And I think, we spent a long time watching really, really difficult football in League One, 2 seasons worth, maybe even 3, of really difficult to watch football and not winning much and being on the wrong end of some harsh results. And then you come down and talk about a rebuild and bringing in players, and then suddenly it is just dawning on people. I think you're right. It's dawning on fans that this is going to be more attritional than maybe we'd cared to think.
Jord, go on.
I was just going to say, I think Barnet are an interesting case to learn from, where they know how to play games away from home. You guys covered it really well in the preview about their away stats, but they were solid at the back, but didn't lose any of that attacking intent in still being solid. So there's an example there of how you can have the best of both worlds in this division. I do think that is just the Harris style. It is these low scoring, low margin games. And yes, I can't sit here and talk about any half decent saves that we forced their goalkeeper to make on Saturday, but I do think it's fair to say that actually the opening exchanges of the first half, the first sort of 10, 20 minutes or so, we pressed well, had the ball in good areas. Brophy flashes a shot just wide. Second half grew into the game, really played the channels quite well. I thought Mayer had a terrific afternoon. We whip, again, no shots or no saves, but we're whipping balls in. On another day, someone gets the right touch or the good contact, and we do score, and we win that game 1-0, and we edge it. I guess what doesn't do Neil Harris any favours is you're at home in front of 7,500 people, you're going into the final 10 or 5 minutes 0-0, and it doesn't feel like you're pushing for the winner. It felt like he settled things that we've seen him do in home games before when we've got a lead. So I think the frustrations, it's all down to the eye test, and it's what we're seeing.
Well, okay, so on the point about the sort of approach or attitude, let's say, to a game, I think something that is kind of at the core of all of this, we've been talking about it all season, is expectations. We were a really hard side to predict at the start of the season, I think. And I think we kind of all agreed that like our floor would be pretty high under Harris, but maybe our ceiling wouldn't be particularly high. So sort of equals mid-table. We all had us, 11th, 10th, something like that, mid-table. So expecting us to be, well, kind of exactly where we are, apart from Tom, who obviously had us 6th. Something to note on this is the other sides that got relegated with us last year, Bristol Rovers, Crawley, Shrewsbury, they're 19th, 20th and 21st, all 3. I'm not saying that means that that's the expectation for a team that goes down from League 1 to League 2, but remember that stat, I think Vale are the only team to have bounced straight back up in the last 6 seasons or something. It's a hard, clearly the data says that it's hard to bounce back from League 1 to League 2. We don't have to go into the details of why that is, but is it a case of what we're talking about, just tempering expectations? And a lot of fans thinking, as you just said there, Swindle, a lot of fans are kind of thinking, well, we probably do have the squad to do it. The league is weak. That's something that I think has got to be taken into account big time. So why shouldn't we be in the playoffs? Or like there's, that should we be demanding more? Should people like me, who I expected us to be doing what we're doing, but actually, am I being a bit weak on them?
Yeah, that's kind of my point. I think like we've done pretty well, since dropping down and kind of rebuilding and all of that. But I think you look at the league and, already the team in first have already lost 4 games this season. I feel like this league is weaker and it's a bit more there for the taking. And I feel like we've been a bit kind of guarded in our approach, certainly away from home. And then if we're going to make the home the fortress, I feel like they feel like points dropped really when you're going into games like that because, Barnet are now, ahead of us on goal difference, but they've had a fairly indifferent start, identical to ours. So it's one of those where you think you've got to kind of, not have too big visions of, jumping straight back up and pissing the league. But at the same time, I really feel like there's probably been a couple of opportunities missed for us to be in that playoff position already, really. And I think that's where the frustration lies with fans. You've also got to remember how long a season it is. It really does drag on, and you can be in that promotion position with having lost 13 or 14 games in a season. So it is that there is some kind of consideration needing to be given to draws. I think a point gained in certain games like that, and Jordan's reference that Barnet are probably going to be getting better, and certainly it might seem like a better point further down the line. But I can understand the frustration, and it is a cumulative frustration given what's happened in the past few weeks. But football fans are fickle, and a couple of wins in the next couple of games, and suddenly this will be a distant memory.
Well, somehow we're 7 points off top. Like somehow in all of this conversation, the amount of questions that clearly a lot of frustrated fans, understandably so, I can see why. Like we said, it's a trend now. It's not isolated games. 3 off the playoffs still, Jord. I mean, we're still like positioned quite well. 16 games in. It's not like we're a disaster of any sort. But like,
Yeah,
what's gonna change? Right, this is the question. Because it's okay if you're in this position now, 16 games in, and as Swindle says, you're going to run. Say we go beat Barrow and Crew. On November, suddenly unbeaten. Maybe you conceded a handful of goals. You picked up 8 points from 4 games, and got through in 2 cup competitions. You might suddenly go, oh well, look at that. That's a brilliant November. What more can you really ask for? But the thing is, and this is going to bring us on to 2 areas of the pitch, which we've been discussing non-stop, as we have done for a few years, it feels. How's that going to change when we now have one striker who's just himself coming back from an injury, hasn't started a game yet, and a system that seems to totally ignore technically our strongest area of the pitch in centre mid? What's going to change in the next few weeks?
I don't think anything's going to change over the next few weeks. I think the guy's got his plan and he's got his instructions for the season, and we're going to stick with it. And that's the big thing, isn't it? Because 3 points off the playoffs, 7 points off the top. That's all well and good, but that's with like a full squad to pick from. Obviously we're recording this before news of Kouassi's injury has come out. We're all assuming it's the worst because it looked instantly like it was bad. The gestures to the touchline, the fact he limped off, the fact he's had hamstring injuries before. So
someone on the Substack said they saw him after the game and he was like, could barely put any weight on it. But I mean, not a medical expert, I don't think, but just it clearly was something that it's going to be a few months.
Well, that's another reason to sign up to the Substack, right? Getting that insight.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, you get anything diagnosed in there.
So what is going to change between now and what we assume the January window? Because it didn't feel pre-kickoff like we had too much to do in January. I know it's been speculated before, but it feels like we've got a good squad, 2 or 3 intelligent, good acquisitions, and it should be the momentum to see us push on. I won't lie, I am fearful now for where the goals are going to come from, what the style's going to be. Apare's not going to be that target man. Obviously you've got Kachunga as an option there. Can the 2 of them work? I think it will be reverting back to that 4-2-3-1. That will be the solution. That will be the fix. But it's looking like it could be a tricky few weeks.
Do you reckon we could recall Ryan Loft?
Well, I mean, it will be. You'd think it would be in our. I think I was reading on the message board that normally those deals are like it's the parent club who can recall them. So I think it
It's
is
an option.
I think it is an option. And at this point, I mean, the idea of Kachunga having to be relied upon for the next 7 games until January, 7 league games that is, so 9 including the 2 cup, plus then New Year's Day, so chance of someone being in ready to go to play New Year's Day. So let's say 8, and then even 4th of Jan. So like that's 9 games really until you realistically can have another striker in the squad.
And also, you don't want to risk Apare too much, right? Like
He's
you
only
don't
just
want to
coming
be.
back himself, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You don't want to be starting him straight away.
It's a huge part of the season as well. It can be a real deal breaker for your season if you have a really good December into January. It can really set the tone on, get some momentum going into the new year and look towards promotion. But equally, it can really stuff up a season if you go on a losing run in December and start the year off bad. It can really kind of seep into that, and I think it's just a really important time. So we spoke about this a million times, on this podcast, as you said, Julie, in the past few years. I just think it would be so nice to not be in a position where already we're struck down by injuries again, and we've signed players with injury histories again, and are still in this position where we're having to kind of compromise and go with a new setup because we're so short on personnel.
I'm sure we'll recall Loft now that I'm just looking at this because, like, have you also seen the difficulty of some of these fixtures? I mean, we play 8th, 6th twice, 3rd.
There's an MK in there, isn't there?
Yeah,
That's going to be fun.
Yeah, they're 3rd. Gillingham 7th away, and then the first 2 games of next year, both at home, but against 2nd in Walsall and Grimsby in 10th, who were the early front runners. I didn't realise they'd dropped down quite as low as that. But the point being, you're playing basically exclusively top half sides, apart from I think Accrington and Barrow. In the next 9 or 10 games, we've got one striker who's just coming back from injury. That is. It kind of harps back to the summer. We had a few questions on this that, why were we in the summer? We were saying like, I know we laughed a little bit about Loft a lot, but like we didn't replace the personnel in the squad properly, and now we've left ourselves in this situation, which did feel a bit avoidable. Jord, lots of questions of this ilk from Shane, Owen, and David asked, why are other clubs signing free agents, especially free agent strikers, and yet we keep muddling along, watching our forward line get more and more depleted? Is the other option the free agent market?
Absolutely. I think we've spoken before about how we didn't think it was likely, but now it might be that the arm is being twisted too much that we have to look into it. I do think it's. Obviously there's elements there that we are not privy to, budget and so forth. Like, what can we realistically do? It's also, it feels like it's seen as this godsend, but actually, if you're picking someone up that's a free agent, they're not going to be instantly ready. There's going to be time there and training and match minutes needed to get them up to speed. So yes, it could be a solution and it should be considered. And I would be astounded if people like Neil Harris and Mark Bonner aren't discussing it, but it's not going to be that instant, band-aid to fix this solution for us. I'm also wondering like who's still available.
Well, Connor Wickham plays in Dubai City. I just looked up, so he's off.
Why would he want to leave? Why would he want to leave?
It's a pretty sweet deal. Fair play to him. We've had another question on the recruitment side of things, Swindle, which, mid-November to be talking about recruitment. I mean, it's understandable, obviously, with the striker situation, but Nathan's asked, when will the club admit they aren't serious about going up this season? Recruitment clearly shows this, and it's a mid-table squad. We're going back a little bit to the conversation we were just having, but I'm actually not so sure it's so much a squad problem, aside from maybe the depth in attack, as we said in the summer and just said there. I think it's a better squad than mid-table. I think again, it's the system that we're talking about, right?
Yeah, 100%. I think we're in the top 6 or 7 squads in the league, I would say, and I think there's some really strong players in there. You just got to look at CVs and where players have played and what they've done in their careers, in very recent history as well. And I think, yeah, absolutely, we've got a very strong squad. I think there is an injury history in the squad, which we've spoken about, and we're experiencing firsthand, not just up top, but especially up top. That seems to be where, the sick notes are sitting at the moment, and we've also having, reoccurring injuries with the likes of Lavery, which is a difficult pill to swallow because of how effective he is when he does play. But yeah, I don't think the squad. I think the depth is the issue, as you referenced, and I think actually we've got probably one of the strongest midfields in the league, and a fairly competent defence for this level as well. And I think the goalkeeper coming into his own, I don't think there's much questions there. I think you look at the clean sheets and the record at home, and that's the sign of a squad that can play together when they get it right. But that's the thing, the consistency has been our main issue this season. I don't think we've put together 90 minutes of a good performance yet, and I think that's kind of that part of that lies with the setup, but also those injuries certainly haven't helped, and the momentum of kind of playing the same team alongside each other, we haven't quite got that yet. But I don't necessarily think there's a problem with our recruitment or the squad on paper at the start of the season.
Just to defend the recruitment, like it's rare that you build a promotion winning squad in one summer window. Obviously when we came up from the conference, it felt like quite a bit of that was done in the summer, but there were already players in the building that were a big part in that. I think it's always been for me a case of Neil Harris needing 2 to 3 windows to get the squad that he wants. I think the recruitment team, they were busy in the summer. Like there was a good turnover of numbers. Like there was a lot of people that did come in or rejoined, but we did unfortunately still have those tag-alongs. Like there's a few names in there that we weren't able to shift that Harris has inherited, and I don't know if there's a mindset there or like an age or a downward sort of trajectory for those people that is not necessarily his fault. Yes, it's on him to sort of get the best out of them and motivate them and come up with a setup that gets the best from them. But I think the recruitment, just to echo what Swindle said there, was a relatively decent job in the summer. And I don't know, it just feels like we are almost where I was sort of expecting us to be. I was expecting this sort of mid-table season this year because there was this rebuild that needs to be done. Didn't expect us to be so doom and gloom about the striker situation in November, but I guess it kind of was obvious when you're going into the season with Loft and Lavery as options.
Yeah. And I think the other area to talk about here is, Jord talked to me about centre midfield yesterday during the game. What I really noticed from the different view of being in the main stand is the system we play. I mean, this isn't anything new to anyone, but it's literally like a donut in the middle of the pitch of avoiding this space in the middle of the pitch, to the point where Pansby like drops really deep, like more like a right back, and Bennett pushes a bit forward, and we just ignore this whole area in the middle of the pitch and any players who are supposed to be occupying it, and obviously punt it long, punt it, go wide, try and like win flick-ons. And I mean, there's not a huge amount of like plan in that respect from what I saw, but it's the lack of wanting to play through the middle that was so glaringly obvious from the kind of having a side-on angle. Steve summed this up really well. He's on Substack, and he said we might have the best midfield in the league on paper, but Harris continues to set us up to play without one. I mean, it's quite frustrating, isn't it? Like we're spending all these wages on these brilliant centre mids, and then we're kind of refusing to play to their strengths.
Yeah, it is frustrating, and I wonder if, whilst it is a strong 3 or 4 names that we've got there as centre mid, maybe there's too much similarity there. But again, there's talent there, but is there desire? Are these, part of the dad club, just sort of getting those paychecks before they retire? Like, I'm not seeing enough from people like Corey Smith to show that he wants to run through brick walls for the club. So it seems like there's too much similarity in central midfield for me. It'd be nice to see if we could mix that up come January. Pelly Ruddock was just giving me Justin Walker vibes on Saturday, just sort of passing sideways for those that are too young to get that reference. It's a shame because there's clearly talent there, and we need to sort of find a way to get that drive and get them playing. And it must be with the intent and the cautious nature and the sort of the way that he wants to attack that's driving it.
Yeah, I'm kind of interested.
Say something.
Yeah, I'm
look.
really interested in what the kind of what the conversation is like in the week before, and what the idea is, because it does seem like they're like they're missing a point somewhere, and like the setup is it's just not quite right. Like I don't really understand what Neil Harris is telling these players to do in regards to going forward. Like when we get the ball in the middle, what's he saying for them to do other than just pass it sideways? Because it does feel like we're kind of missing an element and missing a player in there.
And I have that same question for Kai. Like, what is he instructing Kai to do in this sort of behind a striker 10 type role? Because it's not effective.
The Kai question is where it's really interesting because I think you're right, Swindle, but I reckon it's genuinely as simple as if we don't have the ball in our defensive third, we're less likely to concede. Does that make sense? So like just on the pure basics of just like if it's not in our defensive third, there is less chance of conceding a goal, right? So just go sideways to go long, full stop. Beyond that, I'm not bothered, which is where I think it's interesting with Kai. Someone made a point about this. It was like Kwasi was doing a decent job of winning a few flick-ons, pretty isolated yesterday. But Kwasi wasn't like, Kai wasn't like running beyond him that I can remember a lot. He wasn't like offering any different type of runs. So why is I guess, Kwasi can't do a lot with it once he's up, fair play for winning it. But it's not like, he's not like trying to chest it down if like Kai's, in front of him to hold it up and then receive the ball. You're right. It's the Kai one that's interesting in that space there, which is the chief creator, right? You would say.
Can I just say what makes this worse? Apologies, I don't know if you were going to mention this later in the running order, but the Neil Harris post-match interview and what he was saying there, basically saying, we're playing 4 attacking players every game and we're still not finding a way. Is it the system? Oh, I changed the system, didn't quite find the cutting edge. And then he says something like, you just say, well, is it just the players? Like this kind of rhetorical question. I was really hacked off with that interview because it's not what I would want from a leader. And he is he is meant to be the leader. And it feels like he's sort of pushing the blame on the players here. And it's like, well, if you're changing the 4 players and you're changing you're changing the system, maybe it's you, maybe it's your intent that needs to change and what you're sort of allowing them to do in terms of, releasing the shackles and getting the best from them.
That's also the sort of thing when you start calling players out, maybe not individually, but like the blame going on the players. It's like kind of first little alarm bell goes off in my head of like, oh, hello, hang on. Don't be digging out players when it's like quite clearly to me. I mean, look, let's not take the blame off the players. I mean, Kai could have impacted the game himself a bit more yesterday. He did have chances when he had the ball at his feet. Not chances, but moments with the ball at his feet in the attacking third and didn't do a lot with it. You see with like Mayer himself, I think we should probably have a word for Mayer on a lot of what we've just said, just to flip the script that like talk about good recruitment. That's a brilliant loan signing. Talk about consistency. Mayer's maybe been the one consistent performer in the squad. Talk about being able to create chances. In that 10-minute spell, Jord, I just thought Mayer, it was the spell where he came alive and everything was going through him. So, to flip it, like there are players who are kind of showing that there is a way here. But I don't like Harris doing it in public after a 0-0 draw at home to Barnet as well. It's like, that's the thing. It's not like you've been beat 4-0 and they can deserve a bit of an airing out in public. It doesn't quite seem bad enough. But yeah, it's tricky, isn't it, with like Kai and stuff. What did you make to Swindle to the other one, Brophy? Because he's had an interesting kind of season, hasn't he?
Yeah, I think we've gone like a full kind of pendulum swing with Brophy because he was kind of, publicly hung out to dry for just having no end product and, almost becoming a meme, Brophy for England, all of this stuff in the past seasons. And then, he's brought goals and contributions to his game and has really kind of evolved and also been one of the mainstays in our team. The amount of performances he's put in and the amount of game time that he's had is astonishing. So I think we've kind of gone like full circle and now, there's a lot of pro Brophy people out there, but I would say that, yeah, I think he when he influences a game, it works really well. But if you look at a player like Adam Mayer, that's the type of player you want in that position, really. Like Mayer, I just wish he'd squared it yesterday, Mayer to Kwasi in that one which he flashed across the box. But I think, yeah, Brophy has flashes of that, but I think there's still a lot of inconsistency in there and that there will be a dud performance, but I don't want to kind of pile too much onto a player who I think generally has actually really improved and has been a great servant to the club. But I think he's probably a League Two playoff player rather than a top three League Two player.
He's not scored since August now, I think. So that streak's kind of fizzled out a little bit. Um, Without having obviously a lot of match action to go over in specifics, Jord, like to bring it wider, which I know is kind of what we've been talking about anyway. This question from Sean. Sean's asked, what's changed from the previous regime? Strand got sacked for poor recruitment and lack of squad depth. Kind of just covered that. Bonner's done exactly the same. This season was meant to be a revolution, as said by the club. What has changed? And I'll let you answer that. Whether it's again this pitch stuff or off pitch stuff or anything.
Well, at least it wasn't pitched as a resolution, I guess. I get the question, I get the sentiment, but I think we need a little bit of perspective when we answer this. For the most part, results have been okay. We've had some good home results, good home form. Yes, not fantastic on the eye, but that mixed in with the odd, shitty away day or some good sort of draws away from home, that to me beats getting beat every week, which was what we were having pretty much for the last, 2-3 seasons, right? I think if we're honest, we are sort of a League Two club based on our history, based on our size. We're in a good place off the pitch, so hopefully that with time can aid things and fund things. Obviously, Julian, you and I had the insight from meeting Bonner and before the season started, and he talked a lot about the things that they're doing, which longer term we will start seeing the benefit from. The scouting network, the looking abroad, the data approach, and so forth. So, yeah, I get the question. What has changed? We seem to be sort of meddling along a little bit, not maybe learning our lessons with recruitment, but I think a lot has changed, and I think they've done a lot in the summer in terms of building the squad. But just to repeat what I said something earlier in the pod, it was always going to be a rebuild, and a rebuild for me needs at least 2, maybe 3 windows, and yeah, with time, get maybe some more negative influences out of the club, people that aren't perhaps earning the wages or on the sort of on the way out in terms of sort of age and fitness, and hopefully come back stronger next season. Not that I'm writing off this season. I still think we've got a lot to play for. If we manage the next few weeks correctly, find some sort of way of dealing with this crisis, this injury crisis, which is what it is, and stay within touch and have a good January, then there's no reason to write off the season at all, which is not what I'm suggesting. But I'm coming at it from someone that was expecting an 11th or 12th place finish, and that's exactly where we are at the moment. So for me, it feels like a lot has changed. There's been some positive there. Yeah, they've got some stuff wrong, but it's a numbers game. Like they're not going to get everything right in one summer.
Yeah, and I think you're right to look at it in a longer term perspective, both in terms of the transfer windows and the rebuild, but also kind of just the club as a whole, and how it's not as simple as Bonner. But it's the first time Bonner's doing the job as director of football. He's only been in the gig about 6 months, hasn't he? It's like you can't change everything overnight. I appreciate that.
And don't forget the badge. What a lovely new badge we've got.
Yeah, lovely new badge. Yeah. So that's done.
And last year, I didn't know what skepasti was. So I've got lots of positives about how this season's going.
Obviously, our partners, the Old Spring, correct, Jord? £15 Matchday Meal Deals to try skepasti. That's definitely the thing that'll cheer you up after another 0-0 draw. The thing is, though, maybe this is like the point to end on, is what you're right, Jord, in terms of when you look forward as far as the next 2-3 windows and what things can change there. It's kind of the next 3-4 weeks that worries me a little bit off the back of yesterday, with Kouassi off, with what we've just spoken about a million times on every pod about our system. Harris has to find a way to score a goal. It sounds so basic for me to say that, but like we have to find a way, don't we, Swindle? Like we have to score some goals. If not, we won't be within touching distance come January, and then we might have a very different type of window, which will be equally frustrating. Then you see the momentum start to shift in the second half of the season. Like there is an importance, as you rightly not corrected yourself, but sort of clarified there, Jord, that like we do stay competitive this season, and we do keep within touching distance of going up, right?
Yeah, 100%. I think it's it's one of those that's going to start becoming a bit of a monkey on our back if we don't kind of, just get it sorted. We're going to a team with a very good defensive record in Barrow, a horrible place to go to. They've conceded less than the team who are first in the table. So just because of their position in the league doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be easy to break down, and we're notoriously bad away. So I do think it's one of those that we kind of need to address pretty quickly. And I think you both made very good points about the post-match interview. I think Harris, used the words not being brave enough, which I think is one thing. But I think, as you said, Jordan, kind of calling them out, it's not going to lift heads. But yeah, he needs to do what he's done in previous jobs and put a rocket up them and turn this around. There's no crisis or anything, but the longer you go without scoring and the longer you go with this kind of pretty poor away record, and then suddenly we get towards the Christmas period and fans are getting on the players back or whatever. So it's an important, as you say, 3 or 4 games, and we need that goal and really need to a convincing away win as well would be nice, or just any away win. So yeah, plenty for them to do.
We could really do with some penalties.
Yeah.
You know what? Had none. Let's just get a load over the next 3-4 weeks to sort of just balance it out for the season. I'm not sure who would take them.
Yeah.
But that could be the solution. Get some penalties.
Have we had one under Harris second time round at all?
Oh God, we need Rangman
We
Tom
so
Walker
rarely
here for
get
that.
penalties. It's crazy.
Yeah, we really do, don't we? Like, I can't think of the last one we had.
Yeah, no, I can't pass.
I just keep thinking of the season that we got relegated out of the league, where we didn't get a penalty until the penultimate game of the season.
Well, that's a nice omen, isn't it?
Oh, God.
And we're in a much better position now than then. So yeah, glass is half full.
Nice.
Do you know where else you can get nice half full glasses? Is our sponsors, the Old Spring, on Ferry Path. I think we should wrap it up here, lads. I think that's about as kind of, I don't know, I wouldn't say critical. I'd say, should we call it a worried pod, an anxious pod, as 2 0-0 draws maybe merits. Thanks very much, Jord, for all your insight.
It's been a pleasure. And before I sign off, I do just want to remind Mark Bonner that Jack Swindlehurst is unattached and available.
My God, yeah, £100 a week, was it?
£100 a week.
I'll do it for £80 a week.
200 now. No. Do it more. They're desperate, Swindle. 200.
Okay. Thanks. Yeah, my agent is Jordan Warland. So please reach out to him with any inquiries.
Well, or we could fund your wage through the coconut tier money, just so as a perk, any coconut tier members can see you play up front for Cambridge United. You head to www.undertheaverstand.com to be signed up. You get bonus pod content every month, feature article every week, and some upcoming merch. And that's it. Thanks everyone for listening.